Okay, folks. So now that we've seen this sort of weird behavior on the part of our variables when we put them together, right? So we put together average education % white, and what we saw was that independently they both seem to have a positive impact on academic performance, but you put them together and suddenly % white flips to a slightly negative correlation. And so again, what that tells us is that those two variables are, what that suggests is that those two variables are correlated with one another. They are not truly independent. And that is an important prerequisite to doing any multiple linear regression. We need to make sure that the things that we are inputting as independent variables are actually independent of each other. So I want to go back just to show what happens if we put these two things against one another. Now, as I mentioned, I've done a little edit on our data set to remove the places where the average educational value was missing, just because it was a very small portion of the data. And so it seemed fine. And so what you can see here is that I am doing nothing different in terms of the scatter plot that I'm generating. And hopefully I was having some data wonkiness earlier. I may have to pause and correct that if I have the same problem, but I think what this will show us, if it works, nope, it got sad. So I'm gonna have to troubleshoot this for a second. What it should show us is that essentially what the relationship is between those two variables. Now, we're not going to try and quantify the relationship between those two variables. It's just to kind of visualize what it looks like when those two variables have a relationship and reinforce our sense that I need to pick one to include in my model rather than including them both. So quick pause here and I will be back with you. So simple problem there. I had forgotten my plt.show. No errors, just didn't tell it to show it. Obviously, if you are working in a Jupyter notebook right now, you are laughing because you don't have to do that. But so what I see here is, now look, this is a messy correlation. We don't know what the correlation coefficients are between these two variables. I am not suggesting that there is a linear relationship between these two variables. But what I am demonstrating, what I am trying to illustrate here is that there is a relationship between these two variables. And again, the key thing is that if I see that kind of relationship between variables, I don't want to use both of them as they are not independent, and therefore I can't use them both as independent variables. And if I try to, I'm going to start to see some wonky behavior. So what this suggests to me, what our experiment here suggests to me is that the average education of a student's parents, sorry, I keep flipping things around here. The average education of a student's parents is going to be, is one of the stronger predictors of academic performance. That is correlated with that the average education level of parents is positively correlated with the segregation level of the school. So schools that are majority white. However, and so actually the segregation level of the school is not a very strong indicator of performance, and actually it's sort of this other thing, and so between the two of them, given their impact, their relative impact on my R² value, which again is the % of the variance that is explained by that variable, and also the size of the coefficients, right? I mean, even in the best case, the positive relationship between segregation level and academic performance was pretty low, especially compared with average education of the parents in general. That would be the thing that I would drop from my model, right? Now, again, it all depends on like, what am I trying to explore here? You know, this might be another way, you know, in the same way that the story that we saw said, hey, what schools are outperforming, we might want to do a similar thing here and say what schools are outperforming based on the education level, the average education level of the parents, right? And so I could put this back here, and I'm going to get that relationship between average education level and academic performance. And so I could now start to say, okay, what are the highly performant schools where, even in the cases where the parents are not super educated, and maybe I want to look at those as my, what are those schools doing right sort of measure. So yeah, that's basically it. If you have any questions about this, obviously please get in touch. Hopefully this has helped you understand some do's and don'ts and processes for doing multiple linear regression. Okay, see you soon.